why I use thalidomide as a term, right, for the audience, because they can't see me. I am, of course, a thalidomide. Well, not of course. I am a thalidomide, right? And I was actually just asked that on Alberta Primetime, because the Canadian organization called Thalidomide Victim Association of Canada, and I just don't like the victim. It makes it too easy. I'm not a victim of the drug. I mean, I'm a product of the drug, yes, but I'm a victim of how the society reacted to me. I mean, right? I mean, some thalidomide did bad things, right? I mean, 90% of it wasn't as a stillbirth. But really I think just saying victim takes away responsibility from the people who influenced my life from the time I was born, whether how they treated my parents, from how in essence, I mean, they allowed one to go to school or not, how the parents could cope with their kid, how the kids were called monsters. I mean, there was so much more which influenced, I mean, my life, how I am now, which had nothing to do as such with the drug, right? And I like factual statements. I mean, I'm a thalidomide. I'm a person, a product of the drug, the same as I can't walk. That's factual. Walking impaired is a judgment, right? It's like humans can't fly, right? Not the body, right? You have to use a plane, right? But you would never talk about your flying impaired, right? Or we're talking about confinement to the wheelchair. Well, I can get out of my wheelchair, but you are confined to your legs. But you would never talk about confinement to your legs, right? So I just don't like language which is based on cultural construction, right? I don't like risk. There's no such thing as having a risk of having a child with Down syndrome. You have a higher probability when you get older to have a child with Down syndrome. Probability is factual, right? Risk is a cultural statement, right? And it's the same with victim and where it comes from. And so I just prefer, I mean, factual statements. I mean, there's nothing wrong to say, right, I'm blind, if that is what it is, right? But visual impaired is again a judgment. So I prefer just factual things. So thalidomide, I think, is just the easiest, and so we use this for many decades. So the term is not new. We use this, I mean, all over the world. In Germany, we use all the term because it's just easier to say thalidomide. In Germany, the term is Contagana, right? Because we have a different word in the German language for the drug, but it's the same thing, right? It's just easier, but we would never say we are Contagan victim, right? Now, some say now thalidomide survivor, and that is in some ways the ones who were born and are still living, but that still doesn't address to that. I mean, there's more to thalidomide than, okay, I'm just here, right? I mean, how I live and how I survived even, that is all really more a social reality, and people in different countries develop quite differently based on how they were treated. The question here is whether we really have a post-eugenic world. I said this before. I think as the society is in the moment, I don't see a post-eugenic world. I see a more and more sophisticated eugenic world, not a post-eugenic world. For that, the social structure has fundamentally to change, and the ability expectations we have from each other, and as a government, and the governments, how they see each others. Also, I think down the road, because we want these improvements, I'm not so sure why, right? I mean, like, I would think pregnancy won't be anymore, right? If the artificial womb comes, that might be simply how you do this in the future. You won't even have pregnancies anymore, right? At least in many settings. Raising a kid, I still think it will be judged increasingly whether your kid, in essence, and given that we have now all the genetic stuff we did to it, then you better also take good care, right, of our product. So I think actually, if we really get there, that we have an artificial womb where we also modify humans with genomes as we see fit, then I actually think there will be also down the road a certification that you make sure that this investment doesn't go haywire because, I mean, right, you totally screw it up. Right? Before, there was no investment. You got pregnant, you had to deal with it, right? And you screwed up your kid, yeah, I mean, right? Then it died or it went into a foster home or, right? But if it's really all about the commodifications, right? Then there is an investment, right? And so I think down the road and even parenthood and so on will change drastically, I think, at least for the ones who are modified. For the ones who are not modified because they can't afford, I think the system will not care how they deal with their kids because they're not seen as really the group they have to focus on anyway. Now this is a very dystopian view, right? Right? I mean, I understand that. But if we're really going down, right, as we go in the moment, right, and the not changing our ability expectations, and the technologies come online where we can play out certain ability expectations, like, I mean, commodification of the body, right, and of the child more, building the genome as we see fit, making, right, competitiveness still important, and so on. I think this dystopian view will happen. I mean, the only way to get to a post-eugenic as a non-eugenic future is really about accepting people for who they are and not even trying to intervene as in, right, I mean, but that means we have to, right, say, okay, these technologies will not be used, but that means the public has to decide we don't want that. As long as the public says, right, or powerful ones, and then the two-thirds society says, oh, that is benefiting me, so I do that, right? And it doesn't matter how you sell it. You could sell it the same as now we're selling genetic testing and termination of pregnancies for the good of the child. We could do the same thing. Or we enhance the kid for the good of the child, and we make sure that it has good parenthood. It's for the good of the child. You can use all kind of dynamics under the label of good for the child, including telling disabled people they can't have children and they can't take care of them, right? I mean, the good for the child can be used. It's a powerful political tool, right? You can use in all kind of ways to in essence, right, to push for what you want, right? And then accordingly to not have certain people being part of it, like telling disabled people they can't be parents, right? And for that, I mean, really I think we really need a total rebooting of our social structure, right? What we see and how we relate to each other. If we don't change, I think with the technologies coming down, I have the feeling it will become a dystopian one. So there has to be a rebooting somewhere of ability expectations and how we relate and how we see each other. Thalidomide was a drug used in the 60s, given to, actually was a sleeping pill, right? And it was the first sleeping pill where you couldn't kill yourself, so you couldn't overdose. And that made it, I mean, right, and actually was also the best sleeping pill ever. You slept and you were really fresh in the morning. So from that point of view, the drug was, I mean, brilliant. It just had a little side effect that it, right, it interfered, it modified the development process of the fetus in the embryo, which led often then to stillbirth, because it modified it in such a way that it was not viable. And that mostly was when you're like, when you took, I mean, right, a few of the drugs. I mean, the thing is, one pill on like day X and you look in certain ways. This is not like you have to take a lot of pills, right? That's why we often, as thalidomiders, look so similar. And looking at me, I normally can tell you, okay, from the chart, your mother took the drug on that day, this one pill, right? Then you get short legs. If you took it on day like Y, short arms. It's totally predictable. So, I mean, even that, I mean, in the end, the drug, whatever it does brilliantly, right? So it was a brilliant sleeping pill. It was very effective in dealing with developmental changes, right? And so then we were born, and then it was all around 1958 to 1962, 63. And then every country, in essence, dealt with thalidomide people, thalidomiders differently. Right? The Germans had some, because it was a German drug, we had the most with 2,867. And there, the parents talked to each other, the parents in essence, had their own support groups and best practices, and the thalidomiders went together into holidays, right, and so on. As I mean, right, like we went to, for example, to Paris and so on. It was all organized, and we all, as thalidomide children, then went on holidays by ourselves, and so when we were teens and so on. So in Canada, for example, that was different. There, the parents weren't really allowed to talk to each other. So there was no best practices, there was no exchange of views, much more isolated. Also, the compensation system was quite different. In Germany, the Germans started to give a pension when you in the 70s, and then they increased this in 2013 quite a bit based on a study done what the living situation of thalidomide people today is as in their body structure, how they are. Like one figure in there is, for example, that the bone structure is of an age of an 80-year-old. So our bones are 30 years older than they should be. We definitely see that with a lot of our people who have to stop working, can't do things anymore. The ones who could walk that they can't walk anymore. Their back, the no-arm people have a lot of pain, right? So, and the study was, I mean, done by the University of Heidelberg, and so I think they were so shocked. There was not even a campaign in Germany. The government and actually the whole parliament just by themselves took the initiative and simply changed the pension, knowing that there's so many costs coming down, right, they have to deal with. In Canada, they had one-time payment of 20,000 to 80,000 in the 1990s, right? And that, of course, was gone in no time. So they just started the campaign, right, in like last week. So what was that? November 26th or something like that. Right the wrong. And it started with a multi-page article in the Globe and Mail. And then petitioning, right, and that went so well that in essence a week later, right, in essence last Monday, the government, right, so the parliament voted unanimously to get into negotiation with the Thalidomide Victim Association of Canada about, right, what to do, right. The thalidomiders here in Canada now want a pension of like 110, like between 70 to 110,000 a year. Depending on your body structure, and a 250,000 one time, right? Many of them will have to modify their houses. They don't have pensions from work because they didn't have enough work years, right? So there's all kind of stuff why this is really not arbitrarily to just go on holidays. This is, I mean, based on a needs assessment. So Rob and I were talking for many years when I was in Edmonton, back and forward about kinship, right, and how to use that. And I think thalidomide is also a term you use because you have a certain kinship, right, cultural kinship. You went through the same stuff. You can more or less finish each other's sentences, right? This is like kinship as in belonging, right? It doesn't mean that you like everyone, but it's like, right, I mean, it's just, you have something, it's like, I mean, belonging based on shared experience, which are quite, I mean, unique, whether how people, right, I mean, reacted to you, right? It's the same, the little people of America, right? I mean, they have their own really culture, right? Their own ways, their own meetings, right? They feel kinship with each other's, right? There's a disability culture, I think, right? Where people really can relate more. It doesn't mean that you have to like everyone in there, right? But there's a certain understanding. For example, as a comedian, you can make much better jokes in front of disabled people as a disabled person than in front of non-disabled people. You can't make the same kind of jokes, right, in front of a man, right? Because the non-disability community would not understand the joke or would be feeling guilty or whatever. So within my own community, right, that's a different narrative. So, I mean, that's different to like in academic discourse around kinship and right, biological versus, but I think you can relate more. the one thing which is interesting is, I mean, we all the time think about thalidomide as a drug from the 60s. But it's interesting. The drug was supposed to be antibiotic. That's the only thing it never became. All the applications were found by accident. So they did something and they found that the animals got sleepy. Right? That's how they're sleeping. And then an Israeli doctor used this as a sleeping pill for his leprosy patients. And then he saw that in essence the skin lesions, the ENL part of leprosy went away. So the WHO in the 60s in essence set up programs to use thalidomide, right, for leprosy patients. So the drug never went actually away. It was just changing. So leprosy. Now leprosy is of course very confined. And in Brazil it's quite interesting. They have the leprosy colonies are really in like say in the Amazon. And so they generated their own, so got the product from actually the German company who did this in the 60s. They produced their own source, and then they gave it to the leprosy colonies, right? Someone from Amazon was coming into town, got the prescriptions, went back, and then of course they felt, oh, right, as for the guy, well, look at that, that's good. I mean, his skin lesions go away. Then the woman says, well, that must be also good for me. Right, there was I think it was W5, on Canadian TV about the Brazilian ones, and it showed the package, the warning was all in English, right, not in Spanish, not in Portuguese. But the thing is, all by a sudden there were quite a few born who looked like us, but they're all 20, 30 years younger than us, right? They're all born within the leprosy colonies. What's also interesting from the film, at least one would have got the impression that the discourse was different. At that time, the parents weren't blaming their kid, right? They didn't see their kid as a horror. They were blaming government for the lack of support. Whereas in the 60s, most parents, or a lot of parents, simply blamed their kid, right? And what a horror, and right? In the US, we had this big case of Sherry Finkbein, right? Finkstein, right, who was a TV show person in Arizona who wanted to have a pregnancy at termination because she got some thalidomide pills when she was on holidays. And she didn't get that, I mean, right, and then she petitioned Kennedy and he said, you can't do that. And she went to Sweden for the termination of her pregnancy.